I'm Christian Bryant. If this is your first time joining us, all you need to know is that this is a show where we dive deep on topics and bring you some of the unique storytelling from around the company. As a bonus, you might laugh at some point during the show, and no, it doesn't matter if it's with me or at me. We want to talk about something that looms over generations of Americans, the ever-growing burden of student loan debt. President Biden recently announced an extension of the student loan payment pause just a few weeks before it was scheduled to end on May 1st.
This continued pause will help Americans breathe a little easier as we recover and rebuild from the pandemic.
The payment freeze is now set to continue until at least August 31st for the vast majority of the over 40 million Americans with student loans owned by the U.S. Department of Education. The pause has provided a reprieve from a bill that can often cost hundreds of dollars a month, and it spared people the interest that would accrue in that time too. So what kind of impact has this actually had on folks with student loan debt? And has the pandemic era pause actually done some good?
A lot of consumers who were not necessarily financially impacted by the pandemic were utilizing the pause to pay down other high interest debt. So I heard a lot of stories of people paying off credit cards, maybe paying off a car loan, or saving, putting more money towards a down payment for a car or home. As this has progressed, I'm hearing more from borrowers that are planning on utilizing the pause to pay down their loan.
The numbers say, yeah, that pause in repayment and interest has actually made a significant difference for many Americans. Data from the California Policy Lab at the University of California estimates borrowers save roughly $210 each month thanks to the pause. But borrowers are still counting on an opportunity to get some degree of forgiveness.
It would just take a huge weight off of my shoulders. I feel like I could choose to teach for the right reasons every day, or I could consider other options that might allow me to seek out other professional options. I really would like to go back for my PhD within the next 5 to 8 years.
Ryan Johnson, a high school and college chemistry educator, is in a slightly different boat from a lot of borrowers. He has almost $150,000 in student loan debt from getting 2 degrees that enabled him to follow his passion for teaching. His loans could be forgiven after a few more years of payments through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program for public servants like teachers. But opponents of student loan forgiveness worry that this kind of lifting of federal debt could penalize those who didn't go to college or who already paid off their debts.
I would say the number one problem with student loan forgiveness en masse is the fact that it's very regressive. So we know that most of the time, higher education is going to pay off. That's not universally true, but that is true most of the time, that people who get more education tend to earn more.
Preston Cooper is a research fellow at the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, a nonprofit think tank that promotes free market and free enterprise solutions. He argues that the money for potential student debt aid could be put toward broader economic relief.
And even if you want to cancel just $10,000 of student debt, that would amount to about $370 billion in costs. You could send out a whole nother stimulus check, more stimulus checks, like we did at the beginning of the pandemic for that cost.
But for advocates, a temporary solution isn't enough. Cody Hunanian is the executive director of an advocacy group called the Student Debt Crisis Center. He says that this is an opportunity to lift the burdens of student debt once and for all.
People were crushed by student loan debt before the pandemic, and this relief has helped them survive the last 2 years, which have been so challenging. But we still need a bold solution that does something about the growing student debt crisis that has been happening way before this pandemic began.
And the thought from advocates like Hunanian is that a solution like this helps everybody.
I think most Americans, if you really frame policy like this, they recognize that, okay, canceling student loan debt, it may not benefit me or my family, but it'll benefit my neighbor or my family member or my community. And by doing so, we'll help uplift all those around me, and our entire society will benefit.
And in Washington, we haven't seen too much long-term change enacted yet. Republicans are by and large opposed to student debt cancellation, and we've seen some back and forth between Democrats over whose responsibility it is to implement a solution. Here's what President Biden said while running for president.
What about the students? Is now a time to forgive student debt and then restructure how we pay for college so we're not here again in 10 years?
The answer is yes. That's why I proposed and the House, Nancy, put it in the plan to immediately provide $10,000 in debt relief as stimulus right now for students.
It's been over a year since President Biden took office and nearly 2 years since that "right now" comment, and most folks with student loans are still waiting for that $10,000 in relief. The Biden administration has canceled $17 billion in student loan debt already, more than any other president. But that's a drop in the bucket compared to the $1.6 trillion in estimated overall student loan debt. But it's already helped more than 700,000 borrowers, including those who were eligible due to their public service work and people who attended for-profit colleges. The White House said in early 2021 that it would have the Education Department try and figure out how much the president can do to help borrowers via executive action. But over a year later, that memo has not been made fully public yet, as a public records request from activists at the Debt Collective had the body of the memo completely redacted. In the meantime, the Biden administration has said that, legally speaking, it's up to Congress to pass that relief. But many Democrats in Congress believe that the power lies with the president and that President Biden can cancel $10,000 or even $50,000 per person in debt with the stroke of a pen.
The administration should take further action to cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt per borrower.
Democrats leading House and Senate education committees put out statements in March calling for the president to extend the pause into 2023. And at the end of March, more than 90 Democrats in Congress signed a letter calling on the president to both extend the pause and cancel student debt by executive action.